My name is Clayton Harrow, and I used to believe in blind trust. That kind of quiet, solid faith that doesn't question the whereabouts of the woman you married because you think she'd never betray you. That kind of faith that lets a man sleep through the night without wondering if his wife is with someone else. But now I know that kind of faith is the easiest thing to weaponize against a man like me. It was a Thursday when the final puzzle piece fell into place. Not a special day. Nothing dramatic. Just one more ordinary moment in a string of them, until it wasn't. My wife, Lorna, had texted me that morning, "Late client dinner. Don't wait up." I'd read those words before, maybe 10, 12 times in the last couple of months. Each one a tiny cut I didn't want to admit was bleeding. But this time I didn't ignore the feeling in my gut. I left work early, told my assistant I had a headache, which was only half a lie. My mind was clouded, restless. Something in me needed answers. Not suspicions, not guesses, answers. I drove home first, checked the GPS tracker I'd installed under Lorna's rear bumper the week before. She told me she was heading downtown to meet a client near the Riverwalk. But the GPS dot was blinking at a different location. A place called Hills and Vine, a boutique restaurant tucked away in a quiet part of town. A place I'd never been invited to. A place I once heard her say was too romantic for business. I sat behind the wheel of my car outside that restaurant for nearly 40 minutes. I didn't even need binoculars. The windows were wide, and Lorna made no effort to hide. She was laughing, leaning forward, her hand casually resting on the arm of a man I'd never seen before. Clean-shaven, probably a little younger than her, confident in a way that made my stomach twist. My hands didn't shake. I didn't rage. I just sat there and watched the woman I gave 15 years of my life to lie with her whole body, with her smile, with the way she tilted her head at him. I saw things in that moment I hadn't seen in years. Her spark, her attention, her desire. All of it aimed at someone else. That's when I made the decision. I left the restaurant, drove home in silence. No music, just the sound of my own breath and the dull hum of betrayal building behind my ribs. I called my neighbor, Weldon, a retired locksmith who owed me a few favors. No questions asked. He came over with the tools and we changed every lock on every door, front, back, side, even the garage. By the time we were done, I'd already packed a bag for her, neatly folded her favorite clothes, tucked away her phone charger, her vitamins, even the silk robe she wore on Sunday mornings like she was still a caring wife. I left the suitcase just inside the front porch. The porch light stayed off. At 9:43 p.m., my phone buzzed. Her name lit up the screen. I didn't answer. She called again, then again. And when I finally picked up, not out of sympathy, but because I wanted her to hear the silence on my end, she said the words I'll never forget. "Qley, the key's not working. Why did you change the locks?" I didn't reply. I just breathed in, slow and deep. That was the moment. That's when I acted. And what I did next, she never saw coming. The silence after she asked that question, "Why did you change the locks?" stretched between us like a canyon. I didn't fill it. I let it hang. She called my name again, softer this time, like she was speaking to the man I used to be. The man who would have explained himself, who would have rushed outside in slippers with an apology and a fresh key. But that man didn't live here anymore. "I know where you were," I said finally. My voice sounded foreign even to me. Low, even, steady. A pause. Then, "Clayton, you're not serious. It's not what you think." I'd heard those exact words once before, 20 years ago, from my father when I caught him kissing someone who wasn't my mother. Back then, I believed them. Back then, those words carried weight. Now they felt like dust. I ended the call without another word. I didn't slam the phone. I didn't throw it. I placed it gently on the kitchen counter, like setting down a glass that had already cracked, careful not to break it completely, even though part of me knew it was already useless. It wasn't rage that drove me to act that night. It was clarity. People talk about heartbreak like it's chaos, like it shatters your insides into 1,000 tiny pieces. But they're wrong. Real betrayal doesn't break you. It empties you quietly, subtly, like a slow leak in a tire that you don't notice until the car starts pulling to the side, and you realize you've been off course for miles. I walked the house slowly, touching things like I was in someone else's home. The framed photo of our wedding in Taos. The porcelain bowl she said she found in Napa, but I later learned was from a hotel gift shop. The notes on the fridge, her handwriting curved and perfect. Pick up oat milk. Therapist Thursday at 3. Don't forget the dog's pills. Each one felt like a message from a stranger. At 10:11 p.m., I heard the car. She pulled into the driveway too fast. She always did that when she was nervous. Overshot the curve, tapped the brakes too late. I stood by the window just far enough in the shadows. She got out of the car quickly, heels clicking on the pavement, phone pressed to her ear. Her voice rose, frustrated. Qley, pick up. You can't just lock me out. This is crazy. I'm your wife. She rattled the doorknob, knelt beside the welcome mat where she'd hidden a spare key years ago, before we ever had anything worth protecting. That key wasn't there anymore. I watched her realize it. She stepped back and looked up at the windows, like she could feel me watching. She couldn't see me. The lights were off behind me and I didn't move. Not even when she shouted, "You're being childish." Childish? That's what she called the man who had spent the last decade keeping her life steady while she unraveled it behind his back. She stood there for another 20 minutes. I thought she might cry. She didn't. Eventually, she returned to the car, pulled out her phone again, and this time, instead of calling me, she called him. She paced. She laughed. She said she'd figure it out. That was the moment I understood. She never once considered I might be done. That this time wasn't a game. That this wasn't some power move she could outmaneuver. She thought the door would open again. But what she didn't realize is that I had locked far more than just the house behind her. I had locked her out of a version of me that no longer existed. And the next morning, she would learn how far I'd already gone. The house was quiet again. The kind of quiet that feels deliberate. Not peaceful, not empty, but expectant, like it's watching you. I stood in the hallway barefoot, staring at the grain of the wooden floor under my feet. 15 years in this house, and I never really saw it until now. Not like this. She was gone. Not far, but gone in the only way that mattered. I didn't sleep. I didn't sit either. I just walked the hallway to the kitchen to the garage back to the stairs. Over and over. I didn't count how many laps. I didn't need to. The whole time, one thought refused to leave. What if she never actually loved the quiet man I was? She used to say she liked that about me. How I didn't need to be the loudest in the room, that I was steady, that I listened. But maybe what she really meant was that I was predictable, easy to deceive, comfortable in the background. People love shadows until they start paying attention. At 3:04 a.m., I found myself in the storage room. I opened the old cedar chest near the back wall, the one we never touched. Inside was the life we built, packed into a single forgotten box. Postcards from coastal towns. Ticket stubs from museums. Her note from our second anniversary. Still the best decision I've ever made. I stared at that line for a long time. I didn't cry. It's strange how your body can feel like it should. How your chest tightens, your throat locks, but no tears come. I used to think breaking down meant weakness. Now I know that numbness is worse. When you've bled too much to feel it anymore. By sunrise, I'd already decided what the day would look like. I printed the bank statements. I sorted the house title. I changed every single password. I set up a security system and gave the code to exactly one person. My sister, May, who always saw through Lorna's smile. At 8:27 a.m., my phone buzzed. A text from her. "Can we talk in person? I'm at my mom's. Please, Qley. I didn't expect this from you. Didn't expect this from me. Not, I'm sorry. Not, please let me explain. Just confusion that I had acted. That I didn't wait around like the backdrop husband she'd crafted in her mind. I didn't respond. Instead, I opened the drawer in the hallway. Inside, wrapped in a linen napkin, was the small photo she'd always kept of her and that man. She thought I hadn't seen it, thought she hid it behind an old envelope. They were sitting together on a bench by the water, wind in their hair, holding ice cream cones. He was smiling at the camera. She was smiling at him. That image did something to me. Not because of the betrayal, but because of the clarity. She had already left me long before I locked that door. Emotionally, intimately, spiritually. I had just been delayed in noticing. And now, with the locks changed, the passwords reset, and her suitcase untouched on the porch, I realized something crucial. This wasn't revenge. It was a beginning. But what came next, that wasn't something I could plan. Because she was about to fight back, and she was going to do it dirty. I spent the morning rearranging furniture. Not out of spite, not to erase her fingerprints. I did it because I needed the house to look like it belonged to someone else. Anyone else. Someone who didn't wait by the window while his wife had dessert with another man. Someone who didn't spend years confusing stability with neglect. The couch, I turned it toward the garden window, the one she hated because it caught too much light in the afternoons. The books, I moved them from alphabetical to emotional. The ones that made me laugh on top, the ones that hurt me most at the bottom. Her paintings, I left them on the wall, but I turned 2 of them upside down. Let her wonder why. At noon, the first knock came. 3 polite taps. I didn't answer. A few minutes later, another knock. Firmer this time. Still no voice. I knew it wasn't her. She never knocked like that. She tapped, soft, fluttering, like she assumed the door would open before she even finished. At 12:14 p.m., I opened the front door to find a man in a charcoal blazer holding a small folder with my name on the label. "Are you Mr. Clayton Harrow?" I nodded. He handed me the envelope and offered a smile that didn't touch his eyes. "Your wife's attorney asked that I deliver these personally." I didn't open it. I didn't have to. She was making her move, and she wanted me to know she wasn't afraid to strike first. Funny how fast someone can go from, "let's talk in person," to serving papers. She wasn't heartbroken. She was cornered. And Lorna had never handled corners well. She was a runner, a dancer, a woman who built her whole identity on being admired from across a room, never questioned up close. I left the envelope on the porch step. The wind would take care of it. That night, I got an email from her personal account. Subject line: "I deserve better than this." Not a word about what she'd done. Just a list of complaints. "You've humiliated me. You've made this uglier than it had to be. You're acting like I'm disposable." I read the message slowly, not once, but twice. Then I wrote exactly 1 sentence in response. "If this is what you write to the man you betrayed, maybe it was never about love." I didn't send it. I just wrote it to feel the weight of truth leave my hands. Instead, I sat in the living room in the chair she always said was too stiff and stared out the garden window into the night. It was raining, a soft rhythm tapping across the glass, like the world was trying to soothe me. But I didn't want comfort. I wanted clarity. And as I sat there, one realization echoed louder than anything else. She's still calling me husband. But I don't know that man anymore. The man I am now, he's not kind the same way. Not soft in the center. Not waiting for apologies that will never come. And if she thinks she knows how far I'll go, she's about to find out she never knew me at all. You can live in a place for years and never really see it. Not truly. But once someone breaks something inside you, once the illusion is gone, the walls begin to whisper. They don't tell you secrets. They remind you of what you ignored. That morning, I didn't check my phone. I didn't look for messages, missed calls, or empty apologies. I brewed coffee without reaching for her mug. I left the second chair at the table tucked in. I didn't speak out loud, not even to the dog. Instead, I walked room to room and noticed things not for what they were, but what they had become. In the upstairs hallway, the dent in the baseboard we made while carrying her grandmother's armoire. She cried that day, not because it broke, but because she'd always imagined passing it on to a daughter we never had. I believed her then. I don't know if I should have. In the second bathroom, a bottle of perfume half full. I picked it up, twisted the cap off, and breathed in slowly. It didn't remind me of her anymore. It reminded me of the lobby of the hotel she met him at. I knew the smell from the elevator walls. She told me that perfume made her feel powerful. Now I knew what kind of power she meant. In the bottom drawer of her nightstand, I found the folded note I'd written her years ago after a business trip. A simple thing. Missed your laugh. The bed felt cold. You were missed. She had underlined the last word. I once thought that meant she cherished it. But what kind of person keeps something sentimental while erasing the person who wrote it? No, that drawer didn't hold meaning. It held theater. A stage she left untouched in case someone asked her to prove she still cared. By noon, I had gathered a small pile of items. A photo of us at Yellowstone she had cropped to use as her profile picture, but edited me out entirely. A letter she never sent to her sister, where she described our marriage as safe, but too still, like a lake without fish. An envelope containing 2 receipts from the same wine bar. One from our anniversary, one from a random Wednesday she had supposedly stayed late at the clinic. And a parking ticket, issued to her license plate at 2:48 a.m., outside a residential building I didn't recognize. None of this was evidence. Not anymore. This wasn't a case. It wasn't a puzzle. It was a pattern. A song she had been playing under my nose, and I'd mistaken it for silence. Later, I sat outside on the back steps in the spot where she used to read while I grilled on Sundays. The chair across from me still had the faint outline of her shape in the cushion. I watched the shadows change as the sun slid west. For the first time in weeks, I let the stillness fill me. It didn't hurt. It didn't soothe me either. It simply confirmed what I had begun to suspect. She didn't break my heart. She just took it for granted for so long, it wore itself out on its own. Some men fantasize about fire when they've been betrayed. They picture the ash, the silence, the finality of smoke swallowing everything. I didn't burn a single item of hers. I didn't rip up photos or toss her dresses in the yard. That kind of violence, even the symbolic kind, felt like it gave her too much weight. Instead, I displayed her things. I set her favorite books on the windowsill, pages fanned like flower petals. I hung the dress she wore the night of our 5th anniversary in the living room like art. I placed her hairbrush beside the kitchen sink. Not hidden, not cleaned, just there. Quiet. It wasn't a shrine. It was evidence of absence, of a life walked out of slowly, not shattered in one blow. When May stopped by, my sister, the only one who knew anything, she walked through the house and said nothing for 5 full minutes. Then, standing at the foot of the staircase, she asked, "Is this for you, or for her?" I didn't answer her. I didn't know the answer. Maybe it was both. Because despite everything, there was still a part of me hoping she'd walk through the door and see her life arranged like a gallery and feel, even for a second, the way it all once mattered. But she didn't come. And the longer the silence lasted, the more I realized her absence didn't feel like a wound anymore. Felt like a decision. She was letting it rot. She wanted me to clean it up so she could feel less guilty for leaving. The next morning, I opened the attic. I hadn't gone up there since we moved in. The air was thick, still, soaked in dust and forgotten seasons. And there it was, the box we packed when we merged our lives. Old keys, college sweatshirts, letters we once wrote in hotel rooms. I opened it slowly. The letters were still there. My handwriting first, hers second. Her ink was always more elegant, looped and spaced like it cared how it looked. I read one she wrote me on the day I got my teaching job. "I've always loved watching you become something. You don't chase life, you build it slowly, and somehow that makes it stronger." I read that line again. She knew me. She admired the very thing she would later find dull. That was the tragedy of it. Not that she cheated, not that she lied, but that she threw herself at the illusion of excitement and forgot that slow things still move. That night, I took down the upside-down paintings. Not for her. For me. I was done making statements. I was done performing grief. Now it was time to build. But this time, not a life she could live in. This time, it would be a place only I could call home. I didn't plan on running into him. The man. The one she used to disappear with. The one whose name I refused to say out loud, as if ignoring it might make the shape of him vanish. But there he was. Saturday morning, grocery store. Of all places, the produce aisle. Avocados, to be specific. He held one in his hand and squeezed it too hard. It bruised. He looked up, saw me, didn't flinch. Instead, he said, "You ever figure out how to pick a good one of these?" His voice was casual, as if he hadn't sat across from my wife, touched her hand, leaned in close, and smiled like he'd won something. He was either incredibly unaware or playing a role. I didn't answer. He reached for another avocado. Less pressure this time. They're either too hard or gone bad. No in between. Still no reaction from me. He gave a light laugh, almost to himself, and said, "You look familiar." And that was it. That's when I realized he knew. Of course he knew, but he was pretending not to. And in doing so, he gave me the greatest gift he possibly could: distance. He was no longer the monster in my mind, the smooth stranger who'd stolen something sacred. Up close, he was just ordinary. A man unsure about fruit. A man whose eyes darted when things got quiet. I looked at him once, directly, and said, "They ripen in the dark. Just leave them alone." He nodded slowly. That was the whole conversation. But the way he looked at me, like he wasn't sure if I was about to swing or cry, told me everything. He expected rage. He expected to be punished. But there's something far worse than vengeance: irrelevance. As I walked away, I didn't feel power. I didn't feel healed. I just felt untied, untethered from the version of myself that needed to win. By the time I reached the parking lot, the sky had shifted. That kind of sharp, midday blue that feels almost artificial. I sat in my car and didn't start the engine right away. I thought about how Lorna had said he was just someone who reminded her of who she used to be. What she didn't realize was, I was already someone who remembered who she truly was, and that was the part she ran from. I didn't chase. I won't. But the final piece, the one I didn't expect, would arrive the next morning. And it wouldn't be from her. The letter arrived in the morning mail. No return address, slanted handwriting, the kind that's careful but rushed, like it wants to be neat but doesn't have the patience. It wasn't from Lorna. It was from her mother. We hadn't spoken in over a year, not since Lorna forgot my birthday, and her mother called me to apologize on her behalf. The envelope held one page. No greeting, no closing, just a paragraph. She told me she thought you were fading, that you stopped laughing in the kitchen, that you weren't curious anymore. But I see now she mistook peace for stillness. And when she found noise, she thought it was music. I read it twice, maybe 3 times. Then I put it away, not because I needed to keep it, but because I didn't need to answer it. That evening, I took the long way home, down by Belmore, where the trees lean like old men dozing, past the diner where Lorna and I had our second date, and she spilled iced tea on my lap and swore she'd never be clumsy again. I smiled at that memory, not with bitterness, not with longing, just a gentle, passing warmth. The house was quiet when I returned. Always was these days. But it didn't feel empty anymore. Felt mine. I lit a single candle in the kitchen, made a cup of coffee, opened the window. Somewhere outside, a wind chime rang out, the soft kind that sounds like it's trying not to wake anyone. I pulled out my notebook, the one I hadn't touched in months, and wrote the first line of a new story. Not about her, not about us, about me. Then I laughed. Not the old kind, not the polite kind. The real kind. The kind that sounds rusty at first, but finds its rhythm. Because the truth was this: the lock I changed, it wasn't to keep her out. It was to keep me in my peace, in my purpose, in the life that waited quietly behind the noise. I didn't lose anything. I was simply found by myself.